I'm going to bring up my friend Alex here, who's going to be moderating the panel. Welcome, Alex.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, and I'm going to bring up the rest of the panel and just hand it over to you all.
Easy enough.
Yeah. All right.
We have the fun people that they saved the best for last, I guess.
There you go.
Except for like all the other people that were amazing. So anyways, guys, thanks so much for joining me for the final panel of the day. For all of you watching, I am Alex Corson. I am the moderator today, and I own and operate a company called Cybersecurity. So we do sales acceleration and enablement for MSPs as well as IT vendors. And I got my my growth and training in the cybersecurity arena. So I guess that's why they put me where they put me. And I have an amazing lineup today made up of JP Kehoe, Dante Orsini, and Jerry O'Brien. JP is Global XDR Sales Lead for Barracuda, which actually just sort of dovetailed really nicely into what we just listened to for less than 10 minutes, and he did very well. So you've been an experienced VP and demonstrated a history of developing team professionals to support thought leaders over the past 20 years. Dante Orsini has been with 1111 Systems since 2008, and he's been working up his way through the ranks of sales and strategy until his current role as Chief Strategy Officer with the team. So with over 30 years in the channel, Dante is passionate evangelist and strategist who can help MSPs plan better. And then we've got Jerry O'Brien, the alliance manager at Storage Guardian, and you've got close to the same amount of time in B2B software and technology sales as well, including managing alliances for Storage Guardian with a focus on Veeam, self-provisioning portal, and incident planner. So I think we have a serious lineup when it comes to the cybersecurity panel and the needs of everything. So guys, welcome.
Thank you.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, we're doing it. All right. So basically, I wanted to take a couple of minutes. I know we only have like 30, but I wanted to take a couple of minutes to just sort of set the stage, because while service portfolio is a huge factor for MSPs and they represent and plan massive changes in cybersecurity every single year. So everything's evolving. The scope of services is evolving. It can be overwhelming. You've heard from Pia today. You've heard references to Roost today. There's automation everywhere. And we're trying to figure out how secure everything is, as well as planning for the future with it, right? So as much as the business and workforce has evolved, so too has the focus, right? So my first question is, how are MSPs and vendors acclimating? Because I think that's a really important standpoint to understand where they're coming from and how they're feeling and how they're acclimating from an actual boots on the ground tactical effort and how are they managing the staffing needs of the cybersecurity industry. Dante, I know you have thoughts on that one. You want to kick this one off?
Yeah, Alex, I mean, I think you actually answered it in your intro, right? I mean, we're seeing the technology's moving very quick, right? Technology alone is not going to get it done. We all know that, right? And that's why we're all in the services industry. So I think that what we're finding is that it's becoming increasingly hard, unless you're a very, very large global organization, to be able to go out and attract the right talent to build out the right security practice. It's difficult, right? So thankfully, the technology is getting better, right? And the tools are getting, much more aligned to someone, being able to provide value in interpreting the data that's coming out of the tool, to help their clients, through the process, right? And I think also what we're finding is that, regardless of how strong your multi-layered approach is, if the big boys really want to get in, right, and girls, it's tough, right? So I think you'll
I like
kind of
that
hear
distinction.
that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, there you go. So I believe that Jerry and I and even JP are going to say the same thing, right? Like when you start to look at all the preventative things that we can do, there's no shortage of great technology, right? But nothing is going to outshine someone that is there to interpret the data and actually take action on behalf of their client. But at the end of the day, you also have to have a complete end-to-end strategy that says, okay, if the worst should happen, if all else fails, how am I going to restore my customer's environment, right? And for years, a lot of us talk about disaster recovery, and I'll tell you that most folks want to talk about cyber recovery resiliency today, right? And there's a reason for that, and we all know what that is, right? So I'll pause and take a breath, but it's a great challenge that we're all trying to overcome at the same time.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we could all repeat the same thing, different versions of it. It's Dante's bang on the money. You know, what one of the things we're certainly seeing, Alex, would be, you know, a very strong acknowledgement that the cyber problem is bigger than us all put together, right? So that's a fact today. The real result and the real key thing for people to recognize is that partnership is one of the solutions. So that goes for, as you just said, like, you know, the vendors into the managed service providers, but equally for the customers out there that have strong partnerships with their managed service provider. So if you're any business today and you're worried about basically risk, cyber risk, you're going to want to have a good, strong relationship with your MSP. So that's a good thing for the people that's taking the time to dial into the channel All Stars today. Like, you're in a really good spot, but there's an onus on us to strengthen those partners, for the MSP to strengthen the partnership with the end customer, but then also to figure out the vendors that you're going to want to have strong partnerships. And that line goes right through from end customer to MSP back into the vendors. And it's our, you know, collective responsibility to try to solve those problems, as Dante just talked about. And actually, Stephen Talon was listening to a second ago, summed it up very, very well as well. So, yeah, there's partnerships a key thing, and I think there's an onus on us all to just help each other. And that's why the MSP community is so powerful, because it is that community. You know, MSPs help MSPs, vendors are here to help and support as well. That's why it's an exciting place to work.
Yeah, very good, JP. Yeah, totally in agreement there with you in relation to the partnerships. Like, we talk about it being teamwork, but you have to have internal and external teamwork working together. And then you have to have a statement of work to make it all happen, with a customer responsibility matrix to pull it all together. And then all that needs to be done up front, because you don't want all these silos of people working on their own. You need to bring it all together. On top of that, custom tools, and allowing your vendors to kind of come together and be able to work within those tools as well. And have a proactive maintenance contract so that you have eyes looking, another set of eyes looking down on the data, and making sure that there's a holistic approach to it and seeing it all together.
Jerry, I love that you just said that they need to have a contract upfront and a matrix of expectations, which I think is something that a lot of people miss when they're going in on their contracts, as well as what the staffing needs are, right? When you're expanding, or when things do hit, what do they do? Right? Yeah. What's your plan B? What happens if? What's the contingency? So I think that's a phenomenal idea. And if any MSPs are listening right now to that, that's something, you know, jot it in your notes, because if you're not doing it, start doing it.
Yeah, because we're seeing that a lot, actually. You know, we get into the engagement, we move along the road, and then we put the statement of work in front of MSPs, and they kind of go, "Ooh, now this is serious." You know what I mean? So it's really to get down to that nuts and bolts of what someone's going to do when things happen, and make sure that everyone knows their roles and have it all into one place, so that at the time of an incident, you're able to pull it up and see who's going to do what and get moving on it.
Yeah. So what? Okay. So in that light, and I do have other questions, but now I'm just going in on this one, right? So what do we do then? If I'm talking to the experts in the space, what do we do as an MSP that would say, okay, when all else fails, when the proverbial S hits the fan and my staff is down and I have the tools, but I still need to get the reports done, I still need to get to the people, and I still need to somehow remote in. I've heard 3 different answers, and they're all right? It's leveraging each other, it's leveraging the community, it's setting proper expectations and making sure that everything is set for a plan B. But how do you leverage the tools and the people that are around you? Because I think it's so oftentimes not enough for us to just tell the MSPs to leverage it, because it's like, okay, but how?
Yeah. So from our point of view, a shameless plug here, we do have a free DR planner, DR runbook, where you put in all the information and then it actually kicks off with a code that the stakeholders have, and they're able to input the code and it kicks off the series of plans that have already been inputted prior to at the earlier stage.
Jerry, you didn't even pay me to say that. That's great. All right. You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, guys, do you have anything else?
One thing I want to just kind of chime in on there, right? So kind of expanding on my comment earlier, right? If you look at disaster recovery, you know, there's, I would like to say this is typically the skeleton in IT's closet, right? When we're talking to end users, nobody knows what they're doing typically, right? It's usually in the heads of a few people, you know, and really you're only as good as your last test. We've all heard this ad nauseum, right? But if you want to differentiate your practice, you need to start to understand that recovering from a cyber event is completely different. It's not about traditional replication. It's about data protection. And I'll bark this from the top of the rooftops all day and twice on Sundays. Most organizations do not even know how to go through a test for a cyber incident. Simply don't. So if you want to differentiate yourself, start studying up on it, because it really comes down to, do you have the right partner that's got enough capacity to bring up multiple copies of that data as fast as possible for you or a third-party forensics organization to start making their way through it. It is not a fast process at all. This isn't about clicking a button and bringing up your latest replica, right? It's about trying to find out when the actual data was compromised. And it's long, it's laborious. And usually there's going to be, you know, digital forensics firms that are brought in by cyber liability insurance carriers. And guess what? They're there for two reasons, right? They're hired by the carrier to make sure that everything that you went through with your client and you attested to that you've got all these different processes and controls in place were actually in place when you were compromised, or they're not going to pay, right? So, and they're finding all sorts of ways to indemnify their way out of it. So for many of you that are, you know, dealing with this on the daily, right, you can see just over the last couple of years how dramatic that, you know, that assessment process has become to even qualify for a policy, right? So that kind of gives everybody here the guide, right, or the measuring stick on what I need to be able to the gaps I need to fill for my client to actually go out and write a policy. But at the end of the day, right, again, if all else fails, what are you doing to run through a cyber tabletop exercise? What are you doing to help your client understand what data is actually vital in their organization, right? You know, some of us, you know, like Jerry said, we've developed tools that will help, you know, assess this, not just up front, but on an ongoing basis. But again, this is an area where I'm telling you the industry needs to really, really study up, because most organizations are simply not prepared for it. And it's a great opportunity for us.
I completely agree with that. Okay, guys,
I don't know if I can add anything more to add to what Jerry and Dante said. The only, probably, if you back up a little bit, right, and you think about, and I won't mention this again, right, when someone talks about the lack of talent, because everyone knows there's a lack of talent. So I read somewhere there's enough to fill 50 NFL stadiums or some crazy number like that, right? The fact that there's so many people not available today to solve this problem. But what it means is that for MSPs today, that really it's difficult for them to, or for their customers, I should say, to understand cyber risk. We're in the risk management business. So that's the first problem that's bringing. And the second one, as Dante just maybe alluded to, is like this complexity that lies out there. So I think a way of differentiating, and MSPs are doing this today, would be like deciding what good looks like for any customer joining them today. So you have maybe come from a place where it's okay just to put in a backup solution or a firewall, and it's not at one platform. So I see definitely MSPs are, you know, mandating what good, better, and best might look like for their customers, because it manages the cyber risk together. And they're also, as Jerry talked about, you know, that shared responsibility comes with that. So getting into a place where you can decide what good looks like, whatever that is easily understood and communicated with the customer, that's a good place to be. Because now you have that clear understanding, and there's a shared responsibility that comes with working together. And going back to that partnership piece, it begins that partnership journey where I said, okay, you're coming on board. This is what my good package looks like. And, you have a journey then to get into better and best. And any vendor that helps you on that journey is someone that definitely should embrace.
Absolutely. So all right, you guys touched on another one that leads me into the next question, which is perfect. So, my own experience, I've been head of business development of almost every single backup company out there at this point, right? So, I mean, the backup pitch is not a sexy pitch, right? This is not something that anybody likes to talk about, but it really is a necessary one. However, when we're talking about cyber attacks and protecting data and mitigating risk, how can you ensure that the data is actually protected and secure from the cyber attacks proactively, and then still making sure that everything is taken care of from a backup perspective, especially with the increased use of cloud services? So you've got SaaS everything at this point, and everybody's going to the cloud.
Go ahead, guys.
Foaming at the mouth for that one. Go, Jerry. We haven't heard from you in a bit.
Yeah. Look,
it's
about offering multiple immutability backup solutions, and also having different approaches to security. That's it in a nutshell. It's also really important, actually, another point is that IT is actually audited by a SOC team, which is kept completely separate. Because in some cases you have an IT team and the SOC team are together, and then that's the doctor looking after himself, really. And that needs to be kind of separated out so that you have two different people, two different teams looking after that. Again, and then in relation, it's business processes, having the processes in place to do, we say at least half-yearly tests. And even like, if you look at the small print on any insurance policy these days, they're all asking, making sure that you have reported that you've been doing half-yearly tests. And if you don't have those tests in place, then if you have an attack and you claim you're from your insurance, you're not going to get it. They'll take your premium on a monthly basis, but they're not going to pay up if you haven't proved that you have the tests done along the way.
Yeah.
Dante, you're up.
I mean, I completely agree, right? There's not too much to add to that, right? I think that, one thing I do want to touch on, though, as Alex brought it up, this is something we talk about day in and day out. The complexity of our clients' environments has grown exponentially in the last 5 years, right? I hear it all the time when I talk to, I would say enterprise accounts where we've got, larger enterprise that are, looking at like their long-term strategic challenges and things like that. And the phrase I hear is, I would move the whole company to SaaS if I could do it, but I can't, right? And, as we're supporting mid-market and SMB customers, we definitely see that that's true there too. And the adoption of SaaS makes the data protection conversation a little bit different, right? So not every SaaS platform is going to give you the best opportunity to provide value for your client, right? So the best that you can do is to consult with them to really dig into the T's and C's as they're looking to adopt certain services, and help them and advise them along the way on what that potential data protection gap may be, right? But I think that the vendor side, and this is, I'm coming at you, JP, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of folks that are out there. Some of us are partnering with various different vendors to help, solve for this problem. But I want to give, obviously, JP an opportunity to talk about that one directly.
Yeah, no, and I mean, you're right. I think, and Stephen, just before this particular session, sort of mentioned XDR, and as a concept, it becomes actually a really good mechanism for MSPs today to consolidate. And you're right, Dante. Like, there's just tremendous amount of data, devices, and obviously different vendors, but it is another evolution of an MSP now. So when I look at it and you think of break fix IT back in the day, and that moved now to managed service providers, and we have people on this call that are running MSPs, the next evolution's happening, which is that you're leading with cyber. So on top of selling IT as a service, you now need to sell cybersecurity as a service. And XDR is that capability to have that conversation, bringing it all together. It's a tremendous competitive advantage. MSPs today are choosing the vendors that make sense for them on that journey, right? What hasn't happened yet at scale is that our businesses today, particularly SMBs, have not made that decision, but it's coming. So MSPs are going to have that wave soon of business say, hey, I need this thing that's going to make it easy to manage all these solutions. So I think that getting the preparedness on the market is important, and helping, pick a vendor that makes sense for you in that journey, to make it easy, right? Because it's like where backup was maybe a number of years ago. It was an option, but it's no longer going to be an option to, simplify all that complexity for any business and just simply make it easier, right?
Right. And also what you just said was very interesting too, because I think a lot of MSPs and anybody on the channel, honestly, that needs to understand, I think we all get the differences between MDR, XDR, all of that, but what are the actual specifics where you must sort of fall under and hit, right? What are the bare minimums to qualify as an XDR or cyber as a service? Because I think there's confusion.
There is.
Yeah.
I think the market is still confused. We live in like acronym soup, right? We got MDR, XDR, SOC, SIEM. So I think, Alex, the way to look at it right now is that it's maturing. Mm-hmm. And it's not yet very clear for anyone in the market. Because one thing that we've picked out, certainly, and you think about a security operating center and what it does, and it might be familiar with some people listening in, but what's the difference between a SIEM, right? You plug it in and collect all this telemetry, a SOC, and a mature security operating center.
Is this a bad joke coming?
And that hasn't, yeah, I must make one, but that hasn't happened yet, right? So the market hasn't matured enough to see the differences. And, again, MSPs are beginning to figure it out, but the market has not yet. That is certainly going to happen. So making decisions now around a vendor that helps you simplify, put in that basic requirements we talked about, good, better, best, and be, have a line on sight on what a mature offering is. It's a bit like, God forbid, if I was sick, you're going to want to go to a doctor. So you're going to go to the good doctor or the better doctor. And like and it's really like an illness. So we're in the cyber risk management space now. We're not in the IT space anymore. We're managing risk. And you're going to need to sort of figure out who's the best group of people and supports for you as a business to manage that risk.
Sure. Jerry, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, we see, going back to testing and doing a half-yearly tests and that, we see that as so important to bring in the stakeholders and the in-customer side of things. So they see what's going on behind it all, and putting a bit of onus back on them, being able to see what the time to spin up servers are at, and seeing and telling them, listen, you need to invest more money here, so that if you want it to be brought up faster, to be able to see. Like, we have one situation a couple of years ago where it was a lawyer firm, I think it was in Florida, and they had we were spinning up their servers, and it was taking longer than we expected. It had taken 4 days or something like that. And what turned out in the end, they were putting pressure on us. Why hadn't you able to do it? Why hadn't you able to do it? They'd never done tests prior to this. And what it turned out, that there was they had one of their SQL servers had a license which was only applicable to that particular server. And if you had done tests in advance of that, it would have caught it. You'd have seen it, and you're able to buy a proper license for the SQL server, and then you're able to spin it up in a matter of minutes or hours, whatever you're paying for. But putting that onus back on the end user to say, listen, you need to invest more money, and that's allowing MSPs to make more money. So that's where we see the testing coming in as an opportunity to get deep with accounts, bring in business owners and point of business, not just the IT people, so that they see where their IT money is being spent. And then and from that point of view, you're able to get more money from those business owners because they're seeing the hard work you're doing behind. Because a lot of the time in IT, they don't appreciate you until something goes down. And that's why it's important to be able to take opportunities to show them the good work that we're doing there,
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy in the channel, and it always has been, where it's more of an education piece that the vendors are responsible to do, so that the MSPs understand what they are responsible for, so that the end users can actually figure out, oh shoot, we have to take care of all this. But that goes right back to the original part of the conversation when we were saying leveraging the relationships and leveraging the partnerships and using and utilizing the specialists of each solution in order to really sort of evangelize what MSPs are doing, right? And what they're trying to do.
The time of generalists is I think it's kind of over. You need to take the best of the different solutions and partner up, and not be the one to try and do it all yourself. Bring people that you like to work with and that you feel can have your back when you need it, and then to be able to go forward together. And then it's important for these solutions that you have to be able to tie in with other solutions to be able to do that. But that's coming, and it's there to a certain extent, and it needs to happen more.
And what I've noticed also is a lot of the MSPs who are experiencing heightened growth are the ones that are horizontally offering very specific specialized solutions, which means that they can leverage the right vendors in that space and then expand out. So you're absolutely right that generalist is sort of not going away, but it's being communicated in a different way now, right? So it's focusing in with a frictionless sort of, entry point, and then expanded upon, which is great. Okay, so we only have, I think, 5 minutes left, but I do want to talk a little bit about because we were talking about mitigation and getting in front of it. Oh, do I have 5 minutes or 2 minutes? Matt's back on.
About 2.5, so.
Oh, we have 2 minutes. Okay, all right. So I'm just going to say, we were talking about how we go through in a preemptive strike, right? What do we do in terms of ransomware and not so preventative? What do we do when we have to come back from something? You got 2 minutes. Go, guys.
Yeah.
No pressure.
We've kind of talked about this a little bit, right? But I think that there's definitely a distinction between, a traditional recovery, right? Mm-hmm. Site failure, human error, whatever, versus cyber, right? And right. I think that these days we can highly automate and orchestrate the failover of infrastructure, right? Where the rubber really meets the road is getting into application recovery in a traditional DR sense, right? And that kind of points to what Jerry was talking about. Like, do you have a team that stands behind you, that understands how to recover a myriad of different applications, right, in a certain amount of time? But that when you get into the cyber side of it, totally different. Now you've got to look at, do I have a team that's got the expertise to bring up multiple copies of that data simultaneously, completely in clean room environments, so the forensics process can happen? Yeah. And to the whole point Jerry made, letting the fox in the hen house, right? Your infrastructure team is probably going to be different, or should be different, than your digital forensics organization, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So I'll add to that really quickly. Get an emergency.
30 seconds.
Get an emergency number for cyber.
Yes.
Think about it. Are you going to be able to ring Microsoft and get 3 rings, you get someone on the phone? Get somebody you can call when you have a problem. Simple as that.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. And the person to kick off the cyber attack shouldn't be the IT manager. It should be on the business side of things. Yeah. Because they're the ones ultimately should pull the trigger on an incident.
Hey, Alex, finish up. I can't believe you let 2 Irish lads on the same call.
I was shocked. I was like, there's no way we're doing this in a certain amount of time. You guys could talk forever. And I've got the red hair, so I'm just they're just letting me on. Guys, thank you so much. This was actually really, really fun. And I think we got a lot of good answers out of it. And if anybody watching wants to see more or wants to hear more from these experts, you've got all the contact information. Matt, you're on.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Take care.
All right.